Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. Who's interested in cryptids? Every single one of you? Excellent. So, why don't we do some introduction? My name is Ray. I'm from Scars Magazine. You do have to speak.
Oh, what I need to say. I'm Brian Hall. What more you need to know?
All right, well, that's Brian.
I'm Brian.
I am Ricardo D. Rebelo. I've actually written an article for Ray in Scars Magazine called Cryptids and Bell Bottoms. And I've been writing different cryptid books to cover different regions of the United States and around the world. So that's my background with that.
My name is Perras-Sanchez. I'm a horror filmmaker, horror author. So I have a really close relationship with cryptids. I have a whole tattoo sleeve of them, and I have a book about cryptids. But I'm glad you guys all share an interest in these weird little creatures.
Hi, my name is Louis Paredes. I'm a weird fiction writer based in New York, and my favorite animal is the platypus.
And I'm Rick Claypool. Love cryptids and monsters since forever. I'm a writer, and a lot of my stories have weird creatures.
All right, since you have the mic, tell us your experience with your love of cryptid. How did you fall in love with cryptids?
I mean, my early original fall in love with cryptids, that had to have been like the school library, whenever there was just that weird little corner of just like the closest thing to like, I don't know, what a second grader gets as like an occult book section, and it has like just all this strange true things, and that's where the Bigfoot and UFO and Loch Ness Monster books are all put together. So that's definitely the that'll be the origin story of that little corner.
Books for me as well. It was the Time Life Mysteries of the Unknown. Yeah. Those the ones with the black covers, the UFOs, the I think they did have a cryptid one, or like mystery monsters. I don't know what it was. So that's what got me into it, and just diving into that series, and just same thing, the little kindergarten occult section.
When I was really young, I was like very, very into like mythology and folklore, and all of a sudden figured out that cryptozoology exists, and these creatures from the mythology and folklore I'm reading about could possibly exist in our world. So I kind of, as a young kid, got really obsessed with that. So it's exciting.
So just to yes and, I also was a big lover of Mysteries of the Unknown. Still have a set of Mysteries of the Unknown, by the way. And stuff that was in the school library. But also Leonard Nimoy used to have this great show in the 70s called In Search Of. And it would scare the crap out of you. And it would only come on like at a random Saturday afternoon, right? So you'd be at home, bored out of your mind, and you'd put on TV, and Mr. Spock's voice would talk to you about strange things, and you were enthralled and terrified.
My first, I guess, introduction to cryptids was also In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. And if you remember the Bigfoot one, that's the same time the $6 Million Man had the Bigfoot. And that kind of like sparked my interest. But I grew up in the mountains of eastern Kentucky. And the only way to describe that, it was a hotbed for supernatural ghost stories and cryptids. So it's kind of like the Twilight Zone meets the Beverly Hillbillies. That's how I grew up. So I grew up hearing all these stories and tales of different monsters and things like that. And of course I read a lot of mythology and fantasy stories, and it just sparked my interest in things like that. And I grew up on one side of the Smokies. On the other side, we're part Cherokee, Powhatan Native. So I grew up listening and hearing all the Native stories, which I'm writing books on and everything there. So it's kind of like I got the best of two different worlds, the settlers, the stories they told, and how they mix with the Native American stories and how they all mesh together. So
The origin of Sasquatch. Yeah, absolutely. So now that, I mean, everybody's pretty much Time Life and In Search Of. That's what we're at. What about film? TV movies, full length, like the movies or TV that like really sparked it. I'll tell you mine. Snow Beast, 1977. Bo Svensson. That was horrifying. So do you have a television or a movie that?
Well, like we said, in search of I remember the episode on the Sasquatch and connecting that with, and I think in the episode they talked about how the Native Americans first talked about that before anybody else did, about the Sasquatch and all the legends. And my own tribe had done the same thing, so I automatically connected that. And then there was a Saturday morning, because in the 70s, which I'm telling you how old I am, there was I think it was Bigfoot and Wild Boy. You remember this on Saturday, so I love that. So they just kept on, it kept on feeding into my Sasquatch and cryptid love and stuff like that. So, you got a mic?
So certainly 70s and early 80s was a big thing for what they call Jaws exploitation, which they tried to take basically any animal, creature, or cryptid and essentially remake Jaws. So Snow Beast was one of them. Beast from Crater Lake was another one. It's not a cryptid, but Grizzly feels like a cryptid movie, even though it's about a grizzly bear. Boggy Creek, Boggy Creek and Return to Boggy Creek, which is also one of the best Mystery Science Theater episodes if you get a chance to get a copy of it. So I would think those were pretty all influential.
Yeah, for TV, Unsolved Mysteries is a big one for me. I love that show. There's some cryptid action on there, and X-Files as well. Growing up, I was very into that. There's a little, every now and then there's a good cryptid episode on there.
Now I can't remember if it was a movie or a series. There was Harry and the Hendersons.
Oh yeah, it was a movie.
There was a movie, right? Yeah. That was like as comical and offbeat as that was. That really just kept me as a young child enthralled with Bigfoot.
Yeah, definitely repeat watches of Harry and the Hendersons, and I will also just sort of and with the Unsolved Mysteries, and the way that was sort of blended to, like, they would be talking about a sea creature that was unknown right next to UFOs, right next to just some random disappearance.
Random disappearance. So now, anybody have any personal experiences that you would like to share? Like possible sightings, possible tree knocking or rock throwing?
So I try to hike 2 or 3 times a week in the Freetown State Forest, which is in the, quote, the Bridgewater Triangle, and I have yet to see anything. I've heard many things, and I've seen a lot of bear poop, but I have not, and it's frustrating. I've gone to, there's actually a Pukwudgie Crossing sign at near the Freetown State Forest, and I've written about Pukwudgies more than any other cryptid, and I have yet to see one, and I'm very heartbroken about that. So.
Explain Pukwudgie.
So a Pukwudgie, the Wampanoag Indians believe that there was these little creatures called Pukwudgies that were essentially, when you think of gremlin, if you took a gremlin and you combined it with a porcupine, that's kind of a Pukwudgie. Critters is probably a better explanation for that. So yeah, the Native Americans believed that the Pukwudgies were just mischief makers, and they would mess stuff up in your camp when you weren't looking. So I just kind of fell in love with that concept, and I think I've written 3 or 4 children's books about them.
So I grew up in northern Vermont near Lake Champlain, and my stepdad is like a French Canadian, he's a construction worker, and him and his crew are working on a house on an island out in Lake Champlain. And these are like kind of like hardcore Vermont redneck dudes that don't believe in stuff like champs and cryptids. So they swear to God they did encounter seeing champ out there, and they know there's some larger fish in Lake Champlain when schools can kind of look like something weird in the water, but they know what that looks like. Like these guys fish too, So they swear to God they saw it. So it's once removed from a champ sighting.
Yeah, I have a similar sort of parent experience, which is that. So I grew up in the sort of outskirts of Pittsburgh, this very woodsy area, and there's a story that my mother would always tell. And this was like, I mean, I was like a teenager or in college at the time, so it was like not a childhood story. But she took our dog for a walk in the woods, and this was a big dog. It was a black lab Malamute mix. It was too big, to be honest with you. And this was they're walking in the woods. She has this beast of a dog, and this dog had like 2 speeds, which was like 0 and charging, right? So it would just sort of charge ahead of her walking in the woods, and normal day. And then the unusual thing was that then it came sort of charging back, and she swears she saw like there was some kind of a shape, some kind of a movement up ahead that freaked her out, and she followed the dog back. So that was all of like her experience of the story. But then the next day, in the local newspaper, there was a report of a Bigfoot sighting in the same woods, and so she swore that's what it must have been, and that had been then it was a family joke for a very long time after that.
I have something. I think it's kind of like the Cherokee version of the Wampanoag Pukwudgie. And I don't want to massacre the Dowaliby because in case some of the tribes watching, I don't want to, insult them by mispronouncing things. But anyways, I've done a lot of like Cherokee trained, tracking and stuff like that. And I take my kids out and I teach them how to track through leaves, different animals. And so, I've seen some things that I'm pretty good at tracking that I can't really, put my finger on exactly what type of animal or creature, and sometimes it's kind of creepy. But getting back to the Pukwudgie, there's a creature in the southern Appalachians that is from the North Carolina side, Kentucky, I think some in Virginia, and they're called coal goblins. And the Cherokee talked about these too. They described in the same way, and the settlers claimed they saw them as well, the Scotch-Irish, German settlers. And they're described as being about 3, kind of like the Pukwudgie, about 3 foot tall, coal black skin, like the coal itself, so where you get the coal goblins, and kind of like dark elves, if you guys are familiar with fantasy. But they had tails, like cats. Now, there's supposed to be colonies of them near the mountains where I grew up, and some of the older folk that I was able to speak with when I write books as well on this stuff, and some of the research I was doing speaking with them, I remember the stories that they said they saw these creatures or knew somebody that did, and which is a scary thing because they were supposed to be cannibals as well. They would catch people and or just kidnap people and take them into the coal mines. The Cherokee teaches that there's several worlds. There's a sky world, there's a world we live on, and then the underworld. And a lot of supernatural beings or cryptids, they believe, come from the underworld, which is under the earth and everything. But there's don't mind me telling a really short story of what happened. True story, Bill Chapman, which I wrote this into a book, was who raised my grandmother. And so he had to go somewhere traveling across the mountains. He was coming back, and he took a shortcut through an area where they said you shouldn't go through when it's getting dark because these coal goblins are everywhere. And so he's being all brave, and he come back, and he's like, you know what, I'm taking the shortcuts, running late. So he's coming back home. And as he was walking, he heard something, looked, and there was a 3 to 4 foot black creature seemed like it had a tail, like 50 yards behind him, half behind a tree. And as he moved, it moved. Now, this is a true story, by the way. So he's like, I am being chased by a coal goblin. And because at this point, many people had supposedly seen them in the area. And so he took off running. Well, it took off running after him. And he heard it. And so at this point, he's not going to turn around and look to see if it's catching him. He's trying to get home. And he got close enough to where they lived, him and Stella Chapman, his wife, and the dog jumped and intercepted it. And he made it through the door and slammed the door. And it killed the dog, like ripped it apart. But come to find out, when, after the thing ran around the house, it was not a coal goblin. It was actually another cryptid from Appalachian, culture and legend, but it's actually debatable whether they're there or not. But my father even seen one. There are large black panthers in southern Appalachia. And a lot of scientists and biologists, zoologists say they're not there. My father saw them, my nephew's seen them. The Cherokee know all about them. There's so many legends. And it gets into the Wampus Cat. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Wampus Cat. It's from the Cherokee legends and things in South America. But that was a true story happened, which actually tied in with a real cryptid that wasn't supposed to be there with another cryptid. So, okay, I'm done schmoozing.
There were some Black Panther sightings in northern Maine too. That lumber, yeah. So people, but again, people like science, they're not up there, but yeah.
Were they supposed to be there though? That's the same thing. Like even the tribe I talked to, I used to do tracking with some of the tribal members there and knew them well, and they would say they saw them all the time, and then they would argue, oh, they're not there. Just like I can say this now. It was 30 years ago. They're not supposed to be there. They saw red wolves. They were supposed to be extinct, and my friend Omar Wildhorse saw them in person. He didn't want me to say anything at the time because he didn't want them coming on the reservation land and all this stuff. But up here, it's far enough. Nobody's going to find out. So,
Chupacabra, go. Chupacabra. I want Chupacabra.
You wanted to?
Yeah, let's.
You want Chupacabra story?
Yeah.
Guys, anybody?
Come on, we're talking cryptids. Chupacabra is the cryptid. Now, do you believe it's a real thing, or do you think it's something with mange?
Something like a bear with mange.
A bear with mange, or a coyote with mange? So a chupacabra can be anything with mange.
So I think it's Discovery.
Yeah.
I think Discovery did a whole thing on this, and they went down to Texas and they went to a bunch of different places. They went to Puerto Rico, and I think that somebody thought they had this skin of something, and it was something that had severe mange, right?
yeah,
But
I'll raise that.
yeah, but I like the idea of a chupacabra.
Yeah, of course. We like the idea of all of it.
Right.
It's like, who wouldn't want Loch Ness in their lake? Any Loch Ness lowdown on anything, Brandon?
Well, he just likes Champlain.
No, I know, but that's not Loch Ness.
Well, and in some sad news, the main researcher for the Loch Ness Monster Project, I think it was a month ago, announced that he officially believes that there isn't one because they haven't found any evidence. But that was kind of a bummer.
That is a bummer.
He's been researching it for I think he was on the project for 40 years, which is kind of sad, but you never know.
My favorite Loch Ness story was, or the theory behind it, was that I remember reading, again, in one of those weird old library books, was that it was some kind of prehistoric worm, that it was like a giant invertebrate, like a worm slug thing, and not even like a plesiosaur at all. And I just thought that was really fascinating, because I just think, the creatures and monsters, whenever we instead of thinking, you think of just how strange some invertebrates are, and like a big worm or a leech or a slug or something like that makes it even more horrifying, and something that would be at that scale. And if that
Things
could
that
be,
exist
yeah,
right now,
right?
The giant centipedes and millipedes. I don't want that.
Yeah.
One of my favorite Loch Ness stories is, I guess, one of the people in Scotland that had been connected to it had gone out, and he was a hunter, and he had this elephant's foot that he had converted into a umbrella stand, and that he had gone out and made tracks to make it seem as if the Loch Ness Monster had in fact come out of the loch. And then eventually he got busted for the fact that he had just gone out there with this giant umbrella stand and just pressed it into the mud.
Well, that's like, what is it, the Gimlin?
Yeah, Gimlin did it film?
Yeah, they're trying to disprove it in every way, shape, or form, and they can't.
Yeah.
They're saying that there's no possible way it could be a suit. What do you think?
The footage? Yeah. I don't know. I think there's a lot of anthropologists that looked at it and said that at the time when that video footage was done, that even Hollywood didn't have suits that good to make, like the the costumes. I mean, look at some of the '80s movies and look at the people in the costumes. That tells you it all. Yeah, but for somebody to, it looks the way the muscles are built. If you study like kinesiology and how creatures move and how peoples move, and if you put somebody in a suit to make them larger, the joints are going to be off, things like that. But the way the Bigfoot moved in that looked very much like how it's anatomically correct. And so that's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. I'm sitting by the right guy. Very proportional. So yeah, I tend to go towards it's more, maybe real.
I don't know. I'm still dubious about that thing because I've worked in film for a long time. I think it's possible. I mean, either way, but that suit was 68 or 70? What was 68, 71?
68, I think.
68. I mean, that would be a very hard suit for a civilian to find back then, because when the direct correlation would be like the Planet of the Apes series, and it doesn't look like one of those outfits.
But if you look at the fur pattern when it does move and when the joints move, it's very difficult to replicate the way the actual hair falls into place.
And the muscles moving.
And the muscles moving. Plus, it was female. If you look at it slowed down, that was a female.
Well, one of my books, I looked at Bigfoot legends around the world, because in every culture, there's some type of Bigfoot legend, and the question is it some sort of like simian creature that people are interpreting in different places as different things, whether it be an ape, whether it be what have you? Because just like you guys said with the Panthers, it's like you can't entirely rule out that anything could have made it over. I mean, the whole world used to be one continent. So everything at one point was landlocked. And we don't know for sure what walked from hither to yon, right? But, I mean, you could argue that there's been a lot of people walking around for a long time, and when you really look at it, the numbers are not there. Like you would think, just the amount of people that hike the Appalachian Trail and the Continental Divide and the Pacific Coast Trail, you would think somebody in doing those trails would have ran across something like this, but I don't know. Maybe.
But it might be a portal creature.
Maybe is what makes it fun.
Yeah, I'm fond of the Bigfoot stories that also make Bigfoot some kind of alien. Like I feel like there's been plenty of those where like there's Bigfoot and there's a UFO, or there's Bigfoot and there's some sort of like supernatural phenomenon, or the way that Bigfoot is described is that maybe it's one big thing with some, or maybe multiple small little critters, whatever. You have there's glowing eyes stories. There's stories that kind of seem to blend with a lot of the weirdness that comes with Mothman. And the weirder the better in terms of, for as far as I'm concerned. If it would make it like, okay, if we're going to have something, a strange monster lurking in the woods, like let's go all the way. Maybe there's some scientific explanation, or maybe it's just proof that the world is 1,000 times more strange than we are even capable of imagining.
And Rhode Island has a blonde Bigfoot. There's a few sightings are in Rhode Island. There's a blonde Bigfoot. Down near, was it Moon Beach? Is that? It's like South County. I can't remember the name of the beach.
Moonstone?
Moonstone, yeah. It was in that area where they saw it. There's a few other sightings too, like your normal brunette Bigfoots that.
I love the hair color.
Or the ones with black fur. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. But like the Bigfoot episodes in Unsolved Mysteries are so terrifying. They're like scarier than like most modern horror. So it's kind of funny how they're depicted. They're like very menacing, but a lot of the encounters aren't really menacing. But the Unsolved Mysteries, ones they talk about, are terrifying. And the reenactments are great.
The beauty of Unsolved Mysteries and In Search Of is that those shows had so much verisimilitude. Like they dealt with everything so seriously, and everyone they interviewed was so serious, and everything and everyone seemed credible, and I think that's what made it so scary, Because you were expecting like a goof, like some, person doing a soft shoe. And here you have all these very sober, straight-laced people looking into the camera and saying, this is what I saw, this is what happened. And then, 12-year-old you is sitting there like...
Well, the 1970s had a plethora of these shows.
Oh, yeah.
And Peter Graves would do them. Peter Graves, Mission Impossible, the original Mission Impossible. But you just were riveted at these shows, and you would you hoped that they were real, and then you hoped that they weren't. Does anybody have any questions or suggestions?
Yes.
Favorite cryptid? Go down the line.
I would have to say Bigfoot. Absolutely.
I am a big fan of the Wisconsin cryptid called the hodag. The hodag is this really bizarre creature that may or may not have been concocted by somebody who's running a carnival out there. And they sewed together like a pigskin inside of a bunch of stuff with horns glued to it and stuff like that. And the town in Wisconsin the town is called Rhinelander. And they take it so seriously that the high school mascot is the hodag. They have hodag days, hodag festivals, hodag carnivals. If you got your phone, take it out, do a search for hodag. It is the most wonderfully absurd looking of all cryptids.
I've definitely met some hodags in my day. Favorite cryptid is the Jersey Devil. I just love I just love the lore behind it. I picture it having a Jersey accent, even though it has a horse head. But there's so many fun variations of the story and just these terrifying elements. It's most folklore, especially most culture actually, it's they're all cautionary tales. And I think this was just how do we keep the kids out of the woods, out of the pine barrens, and it's probably you have this amalgamation monster of a kangaroo tail or a dragon tail, a horse head and bat wings and a goat horns and ram horns. Sometimes it breathes fire, sometimes it doesn't breathe fire, sometimes it walks on your roof and leaves horse footprints. So that's just a fun one to explore. There's all different tales. It was the 13th child of Deborah Leeds, but there's other variations where that's not the case. So it's fun. If you see the drawing of it too, it's so ridiculous. It has these tiny little stick legs, this big upper body. It just looks ridiculous. I love it. If you're listening, Jersey Devil, I'm here for you.
I love that. For me, it's the Mothman. I love the Mothman because of its otherness and how menacing it can be, and however you interpret it, I think it's one of my favorite cryptids.
For me, and this maybe would come as no surprise for anybody who's familiar with my fiction, because I'm really into just monsters sort of being the sort of expression of just upsetness and horror and just extreme emotions. And so the squonk, which people talk about from in particular around Pennsylvania, is when I first heard about it when I was young, it was I was simultaneously moved and terrified by it. The whole thing about what a squonk is that it just sort of goes around the woods just weeping, and it's so grotesque looking and so ugly that it's so upset about its own appearance that it just sort of goes around miserable wailing about its in its misery. And then if it's impossible to catch, because if a sort of net is sort of cast around it, it will dissolve in its own tears.
The squonk is like the teenage goth of the crypt worlds.
That's why I love it. That's it.
Listens to My Chemical Romance. I have to say mine is the Bumble. Does everybody know who the Bumble is? Nobody's... Bumbles bounce.
See, you're sitting next to the right person.
Yes. Come on, everybody knows these animated Christmas specials. The Bumble. Yeah.
I'm Jewish and I got that one.
Well, you don't have to be anything to enjoy those Rankin and Bass specials.
They're great. They're epic.
Anybody else have anything? Jay Mayo. Oh, cute. What do you think of the recent sightings? Oh, he's not a Mothman guy?
This Chicago airport ones?
They're recent sightings.
What part of West Virginia? I drive through there all the time. I'm from East Kentucky, so.
Yeah, so, of course, he wasn't seen, like, he was a comment, warnings, last seen in the bridge. And then, like, a few years ago, he was supposed to be seen flying around Chicago. And, like, in the open daylight, so I didn't know if anybody had any thoughts.
I haven't heard that, but I think there was later sightings in Louisa, Kentucky. I think you probably heard about that. And down there where they had what was the alien one there in Louisa? Yeah, so around that same area. So I don't know if they were just looking for something, but like supposedly there was other sightings into Kentucky of the Mothman. But I don't know if it was like linked to any disasters and stuff. I don't really remember, but I know the Mothman story originally, he showed up and then the bridge collapsed and all that stuff. And
The ones you're talking about from Chicago, it sounds like from the sightings they look different than the one in West Virginia. They sound like more like humanoid. It's kind of cool. But the amount of like eyewitness testimony about those is really fascinating. I'm glad you brought that up. That reminded me of that happening, but it kind of got swept under the rug. That was wild. Netflix did a reboot of Unsolved Mysteries, which was actually pretty great. And they taught there's a Mothman segment, and I think it's like the newest season that came out like a year ago. The Chicago ones are wild. I need to go back and look at that again.
I love the idea of the Mothman not being so much a giant moth as a giant owl. Because I think that would be the scary. Imagine seeing like a 6 foot tall owl. That would be the scariest thing.
Imagine the pellet it would drop.
Exactly.
Anyone else? Come on.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Did you say Gloucester Gold? Yeah. Oh yeah. Another fire breather.
Gloucester has quite a few. Has a few actually, between the sea creatures and the ghouls. So.
Yeah.
Was this Gloucester, Mass?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm from Gloucester, Rhode Island, so I'm confused.
Yeah, getting trail cams out there.
Gloucester, Mass.
We're more Bigfoot.
Yeah.
it's like a hellhound.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the Gloucester.
Yeah, that's So if you trace that into like England and Ireland, you'll get into what's called the Grimms. And so these are like these hellhound dogs that in some stories they're good, in some stories they're evil. And so they were believed to guard like graveyards. And I think a lot of those legends, I mean, who knows, like, I mean, if you want to guard a graveyard, put a really mean dog in the fence at night. Absolutely. But also if you spread the stories of these, okay, there's Grimm's, it's a supernatural hellhound dog. Like it detours people from grave robbing. Now the amazing thing is that story was told in Great Britain and Scotland and Ireland, and it's kind of almost like a puka in a sense, because pukas are horses. That's where you get the word nightmare. But also they can take other forms. But the Grimm is also in southern Appalachia, probably was it from West Virginia? So in that whole area, that was another thing. They believed at night that at graveyards, if you're there and you're not supposed to be, you may run across this dog that's from another world that guards the graves and you know, like sacred areas. And also someone believed like maybe even like burial areas for Native Americans, the dog will appear to keep people from walking across it and things like that. But I think a lot of that is just like, you know, if you spread this story, like, hey, there are field haints out there, like ghosts, that's what in Kentucky, she knows what this is. It keeps kids from walking through the grass at night so they don't get bit by a copperhead snake. So the Grimms are a way of perpetuating a legend so that, like, you know, you're not going to grave rob because, you know, you'll be scared to death, you know, going out at night at the graveyards. It's just a way of, you know, y'all get that.
Yeah.
So you hear that Kentucky coming out, y'all get that?
Y'all.
Y'all.
But that's fine.
As long as y'all understand it, we're good.
Also, he keeps saying Devil Dog. I recommend watching Devil Dog Hound from Hell on YouTube if you get a chance.
Was that the TV one?
That was a TV, guys. TV movies of the 70s were a thing.
I watched it.
And when you watch this movie, you will be like, how is this on television for children to watch?
Well, is this the one where the dog's eyes light up?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I watched.
Yeah.
Me and
Yeah.
I gotta jump in and steal
Yeah.
this.
Go.
Me and my sister watched Devil Dog. Go on YouTube and watch it. You'll probably find it funny. But as kids, we watched this. Come on TV. There's no way something this scary should be on television for kids to watch, right? And so we were afraid to look out our windows at night, me and my sister, because as a German Shepherd, we were looking for, Devil Dog to be looking at us out the window. But yeah, back then they had some horrific. Gargoyles was another one that come out at the same time. And how many people saw Gargoyles? Actually, the legend of Gargoyles is like the seed of Satan and like man fighting is actually tied to all the Nephilim hype happening right now of fallen angels and giants and all that. And it was right there in a 70s film. Yep. So let's tie some more stuff together.
Devil Dog has Satanists at the beginning.
There's a big pentagram to fight Devil Dog he puts on his hand. Oh my God.
Race with the devil.
Race with the devil, yeah.
Terrified me.
You sure you didn't grow up in Indiana in the 70s?
No. And that's why Gen X has this like shared culture.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we all had to watch the same stuff. Because back when there was only 3 channels on TV, you only could see, we all saw the same stuff.
And you were the human antenna.
Right.
They held the tinfoil on the antenna.
So much culture controls so much of what's happening that way, like especially the change in technology. Like my kids can't watch streaming TV, like they can't watch live TV like we did.
Right.
It has to be, I'm going to watch this now. So but that's the reason we all watched In Search Of and all these things.
And we had the TV guide every Friday with our pen, and we underlined everything we were going to watch.
It's true. Any other questions?
That's an excellent question. Okay. All right. She's asking, as authors, did you use cryptids as a springboard to create your own creatures?
Absolutely. Like giants, like lots of different legends of giants. If you go South America, they have the Paredes skulls. If you guys are, and if you really research that, they're not cryptids. They're pretty much proven, but still scientists are trying to kick back. I was part of a documentary film work that first went in. Brian Forster's who went in and got all the video first, but we tied it to giants from the Middle East and all around and stuff like that. But the legends of like the giants of the Native Americans, I took that idea and put it in some of my fantasy books and kind of changed the names, but used like some of the same characteristics and things like that.
Absolutely, because when you think of cryptids, essentially the nucleus of it is the world used to be a place where we knew very little and there was no science. So cryptids were born out of trying to get an answer for something you couldn't explain easily. And essentially the foundation of horror is being terrified of something that you don't have any context for or understanding of. And I think that's why they're like inextricably linked. Do you know what I mean? And the horror people felt, the cryptids came out of a horror that people felt but could not define. So in an effort to define it and take ownership of it, they would give it a name. Whether it be Bigfoot or the Mothman or, whatever it may be. So whenever I'm creating something, that's the vibe I'm going for. The best horror, and I know you guys like cosmic horror. Cosmic horror is kind of the same thing, where it's like, it's about someone experiencing something they can't even put a name to.
I have a book called Recessive Nature, and there's a very familiar cryptid that's the focus of it, but I invented a bunch of other cryptids that are in the book as well. And a lot of cryptids are kind of like, they're kind of made up of the land around them. Not all, but more of them are. So like a lot of the cryptids in this one are kind of a hodgepodge of the natural like wildlife in the Pine Barrens. So you probably know which Jersey, or what I'm talking about from my familiar cryptid. But yeah, I played with some lore with the Jersey Devil legend as well too. So yeah, there's some fake cryptids in there.
For my book Headhunters, again, the Mothman, instead of the moth, I have giant praying mantises that are Mesopotamian demons. So that's what inspired those guys.
So the cryptid connection is more just through like it's a story based on sort of like, you know, lore, legend of things that people see in the woods and can't explain. But I have a short story in the We Are Providence collection called Gourd Guy, and it has that similar sort of structure where there is this legend of this thing that, you know, you don't want to encounter in the woods.
So how are we feeling? How are we feeling about this 32-piece set?
Yes, she's got another question.
Okay.
People work so hard to defend the existence of Earth. Why do you think people fight so hard to like make what is absolutely most real, or like
I think part of it is just it's magic that could exist in the world and it feels good. It's nice to like things are so grim and dark, and I think like as adults we're told to kind of like become adults, and I think there is like still a part of your brain that wants to have fun and be whimsical and believe in this fantastical stuff too. And I think it's like almost like a nice escapism and thing to believe in with all the other horrible shit going on right now. So yeah, it's just nice. I hope they're real. Some of them might be, but I'm glad they're there, even if it's fictitious or not.
It's also next to impossible to prove something doesn't exist, right? It's only as good as whatever instrument you're using to measure it.
And I think there's something incredibly validating about feeling that you know something that you think nobody else believes, that you have this like clarity and vision that nobody else has. And I think for a lot of people, it's fun to take ownership of something and be like, this is what I know, and I know more than anyone else. I've been working on Lizzie Borden stuff for the last 30 years, and one of the things that is fascinating about the people who are in the Lizzie Borden world is they all want to take ownership of that story. They all want to be seen as the expert, the definitive person. And I think cryptids facilitate that for a lot of people, because they feel like, I've studied it, or I know this, and, because there's always something cool about going up to somebody and being like, hey, do you know this? Right? And they go, no, and you're like, oh, you don't know? Right? And for us as writers, that's what we live for. That's our whole, stock and trade, is to go up to somebody and go, hey, do you know this thing? And they don't know, and they're like, ooh, and especially if we could scare them for the first time,
I got two sides of the idea of that. One is treasure hunting. So think of this because I do a lot of tracking and hunting and things, and I've been asked to go on cryptid expeditions because I know Native American tracking and things like that. So there's that thrill of, and a lot of tracking that we do isn't necessarily hunting. It's just going and finding a really rare species of an animal that you don't see much, or finding a white albino squirrel or a black squirrel or something, or like we said, finding the red wolf like my friend did. So there's that idea of it's exciting to try to find something that may not even exist, but what if it does? So everybody has that pirate in them that wants to go hunt treasure, and so that's excitement. But there's another side of it too. Everybody in here probably grew up with some type of, hearing fairy tales and stories growing. And my father used to read books to me, fairy tales and Grimm's things. But what really makes a fairy tale so powerful isn't because it's a fairy tale, that it's for the fact of this is just a made-up story. What makes fairy tales so powerful is that as a kid, there's a good portion of you that knows it's not real, but then there's an inner portion that really believes it. Somewhere this really happened. And we do that as adults what makes a movie good? Suspension of belief. So I think cryptids, I believe there's things out there that has yet to be discovered, by the way, but also that excitement of there's there's a romanticize this about like, you know, it's something magical in the world, and you know, you still want to believe that, and we do that as adults. When you watch Stranger Things or Lord of the Rings, when you watch that for that moment, it is real, and that's what makes it good. Because if it wasn't real, it wouldn't be worth watching or reading, right? It's the same thing with cryptids, and at least in my opinion.
I think everybody needs something to believe in, whether it be Bigfoot or God or anything like that. You want it to be there as a crutch in life because of what we go through. So if you don't have your belief system, what do you have? So cryptids, religion, everything, do it. Have your belief system. And that's why we're all here, actually, isn't it? On that note, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank all of you very much.